Now we went through it pretty quickly. We added a bunch of cuts and made a pretty ugly cube here. Now I don't want you to get too confused or worried. We're going to go through all of this again and the movement and stuff step by step, and I'm going to constantly mention the hotkeys. So I'm going to go ahead and select this guy in object mode. So I'm going to right click, make sure in object mode. I'm going to hit the delete key to get rid of that. I'm going to scroll my wheel out on my mouse a little bit, and then just kind of holding Alt and left clicking, give myself sort of this 3/4 view. Let's go back, and we'll just use poly modeling here, and let's click cube. And I'm going to make sure I'm in the move tool by clicking here or hitting W, and I'm just going to move my cube slightly above the grid like this. Okay. Now, if you want exact coordinates, if we go to our channel box editor, we can go ahead and make it 0.5, and you'll notice it sits perfectly on top of that grid. And that's because our axis controller is in the halfway point. So if we hit space here, you'll notice that it's located directly in the halfway point of our cube. So if we moved it up half, it would have jumped up perfectly on our grid. So I'm going to go ahead and click that again to hide that. I'm going to hit spacebar here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is right click and go down to face mode and click on that top face. Now I'm modeling a Popcan character for a Popcan video game. Let's say it's like the Adventures of Popcan. And so I'm going to make it taller than it is wide. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up a little bit until I feel like I like that shape. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, this is a box or a rectangle or a cube shape, right? It's not exactly a cylindrical shape, which is the shape of a pop can. Why didn't we just make a cylinder here? So I'm going to move this off to the side for a second and click this. The reason is, in my own personal philosophy of modeling, I hate triangles. Not that you don't need them sometimes, but they create a pretty ugly geometric look, and they take to lighting poorly. And you'll notice that the cylinder that Maya gives you has a vertex with a bunch of triangles at the top. If I click a sphere here, you'll notice that this also has that on the top. Now, there are times when you will need this, and that's why they make it this way. And it's actually a little bit less polygons when you're working that way. But for games, so I went ahead and hit the delete key on each one of those. And I'm just going to zero this out in the middle. For games, well, that's on the x-axis. Let's type in 0, come on. And then hit enter, and then I'm going to close my channel. Sorry I keep restarting with the for games. But for games, you generally want to try to keep it all in quads. So how do I make a cylinder out of this shape? Well, we're going to revisit one of the tools from the last video, and that's our mesh tools, insert Edgeloop. And on this vertical edge here, let me zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to alt and click my middle wheel here to pan. On this edge here, I'm just going to click and drop an edge going this way. Then I'm going to click and drop an edge going this way. Now the reason for this is because I'm going to hold shift and right click and go down to smooth, or I'm going to smooth it out by going to mesh and smooth here. And by adding those two edges, it holds my shape and it gives me a pretty nice cylindrical shape. Now if I did that without that, so I'm just going to hold shift and right click for speed and go to smooth here, you'll notice it'll give me a spherical shape, which is good if I was making a sphere. So now you know how I make my cylinders and my spheres when I'm modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And I like this Popcan shape. It gives me a nice little curved top and bottom. I like that a lot. I want it a little bit fatter, so I'm going to hit R. And I'm just going to, on my Z, which is my front-facing axis, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit like this and make him a little bit of a chubbier Popcan. Now, another thing is, periodically while you're modeling, you want to clean your model. Because what's nice about Maya is if you hit Control Z, and then if you hit Control Y, it remembers all of your different steps. It also tries to remember all the different shape changes you made. And there's times when you want to clean this out because it could slow down your computer. So periodically I'll go up to Edit, delete all by type history, and that'll clear that out. And then modify freeze transformation, and that'll freeze this. Now that we have our cylindrical shape, just to have a little bit of fun with it, I'm going to go ahead and throw another edge loop, two edges up here, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a Popcan lip and a little base on the bottom. So let's go back up to Edit Mesh, and mesh tools, and let's grab our insert edge loop tool and add 2 cuts. So one cut here, and then another one below it. Now, how do I create that lip? Well, I'm going to go ahead and go to my scale tool, and I'm just going to, my scale tool. I'm going to double click. Watch how I do this. I just double click this edge, and you'll notice it selects the edge all the way around it. I hit 4 to go into wireframe mode. That's the 4 key. I'm going to hit 6 to go back into that shaded, and then clicking the center cube here, I'm just going to scale that out a little bit. Now, in order to make it look a little bit more like a lip, I'm going to double click this edge here. I'm going to hold the shift key down. I'm going to right click where it says soften harden edge. I'm not releasing the mouse here. I'm going to harden that edge. Alright, let's go ahead and redo that on the bottom here. Go up to mesh tools, insert edge loop tool. And come on, let me get in there. There we go. I'm going to click once going vertically on this vertical edge, and then another one. Hitting R, I'm going to double click on this edge. Let's hit 4 so we can see that a little bit better. And I'm going to scale that out. Let's go ahead and hit 6. And then I'm going to click this edge again, and just so you can see it a little bit better, I went ahead and selected that. Holding shift and right clicking, I'm going to go to soften harden edge and then harden edge. Now you'll notice under these different options here, like for example mesh display, there's harden edge here as well. Okay, and notice that it keeps stacking these, so I don't want my computer to slow down, or my version of Maya. So like I said, periodically edit, delete all by type history, delete that, and notice that I'm always rotating it and I'm snapping it back to this view, and I'm always looking to keep it on the Z axis. So there is our Popcan shape, and essentially we're going to stop there for the modeling process. So the next video we're going to talk about unwrapping our Popcan